If you are currently collecting Social Security benefits, or if you are approaching retirement age and planning to file for your benefits soon, it is absolutely critical that you pay close attention to the seismic shifts occurring in the United States Senate and the broader legislative landscape right now. Over the past several months, we have witnessed legislative activity surrounding Social Security that is far more significant and impactful than anything retirees have seen in decades. This is not just news, it is a fundamental restructuring of how your financial safety net operates. Some of these changes have already been signed into law, while others are currently moving through Congress with genuine, unprecedented momentum. These are not political theories or hypothetical scenarios. These are real, tangible policy shifts with direct, immediate implications for the amount of money that will hit your bank account every single month. By the time you finish listening to this, you will understand exactly what has changed, what is currently being debated on the Senate floor, and most importantly, the specific steps you must take right now to protect and maximize the benefits that you have spent your entire working life earning. To truly understand why this moment is so pivotal, we have to strip away the political noise and get back to the core foundation of this program. Too often, people in Washington speak about Social Security as if it were a government handout, a form of welfare, or a legislative favor bestowed upon the public. This is a dangerous mischaracterization. Social Security is not charity. It is not an entitlement in the pejorative sense. It is, at its heart, a legal and social contract. For generations, working Americans have paid into this system with every single paycheck. That money was deducted before you ever saw it, and you did not have a choice in the matter. You contributed through boom times and recessions, through periods of incredible prosperity and times of national hardship, through wars and global pandemics. You held up your end of the bargain with the expectation that when you reached the twilight of your career, the system would hold up its end of the bargain. For millions of seniors today, that promise is the absolute difference between living with dignity and falling into poverty. According to data analyzed by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, approximately 37% of Americans aged 65 and older would fall below the poverty line if not for Social Security benefits. When you include these benefits, that number drops to under 9%. That is not just a statistic on a page, it is the reality of daily life for millions of your neighbors, friends, and family members. It is the fabric of retirement in this country. Yet, despite the necessity of this program, millions of retirees have spent years watching their hard-earned purchasing power evaporate. You have watched the cost of basic necessities, groceries, medication, housing, and utilities climb at an alarming rate, while your monthly Social Security checks have struggled to keep pace. The annual adjustments that retirees receive, known as cost of living adjustments or COLA, have been calculated using a formula that many economists, advocates, and seniors themselves have argued for years is fundamentally flawed. The issue lies in the formula itself, the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, commonly known as the CPIW. This index tracks the spending habits of people who are currently in the workforce. But here is the problem. People who are still working spend their money very differently than people who are retired. Working-age individuals spend proportionally more of their income on things like transportation, electronics, and entertainment. Retired Americans, by contrast, spend a significantly greater share of their income on healthcare services, prescription drugs, and housing. Because healthcare costs have been rising much faster than the general rate of inflation for years, the current formula essentially ignores the very categories where seniors are feeling the most financial pain. The government calculates the adjustment using a basket of goods that doesn't reflect the life of a retiree. Consequently, the annual increase that seniors receive often fails to cover the actual rise in their cost of living. Year after year, retirees fall just a little bit further behind. Research published by the Senior Citizens League confirms that this gap, when compounded over the last 2 decades, has resulted in a massive, irreversible loss of purchasing power. Even when the official COLA percentage is announced, by the time Medicare premiums, which often see significant jumps, are deducted, many retirees find that their net increase is negligible or non-existent. This is the pattern that has caused such frustration across the country, and it is the pattern that is currently at the center of a massive legislative battle in the Senate. The first major legislative breakthrough that we have seen is a victory that has already been codified into law. If you are a retired public servant, this development likely hits home for you. The Social Security Fairness Act was officially signed into law on January 5, 2025. This legislation was a landmark achievement because it eliminated 2 specific provisions that had unfairly penalized millions of retired public workers for decades: the windfall elimination provision, known as WEP, and the government pension offset, known as GPO. For years, these provisions affected approximately 3 million Americans, including teachers, police officers, firefighters, and other dedicated public servants who had split careers. These workers spent part of their lives in public sector jobs covered by government pensions and part of their lives in private sector jobs where they paid Social Security taxes. The old formulas used to calculate their benefits were punitive, often slashing their hard-earned Social Security payments because they also received a government pension. This created a situation where a retired school teacher who spent years working a part-time job to make ends meet was penalized simply for having worked. The Fairness Act has finally brought that era to an end. This legislation is retroactive to January 2024. Which means that December 2023 was the last month that those unfair reductions were applied. By March 2026, the Social Security Administration had already processed over 3.1 million retroactive payments, totaling roughly $17 billion, with the average retroactive payment sitting at approximately $6,710 per person. However, the process has not been without its hurdles. Implementation is a massive bureaucratic undertaking. Reports from as recently as March 2026 indicate that some retirees are still waiting for their full, recalculated benefits. If you believe you were affected by WEP or GPO and you have not yet received your adjustment or your back pay, you must be proactive. Do not wait for the system to find you. Contact the Social Security Administration directly and request an update on your file. Beyond the WEP and GPO repeal, the second major area of legislative activity involves a direct attack on the COLA formula itself. There is a concerted effort in the Senate to replace the outdated CPI-W with the Consumer Price Index for the Elderly, or CPIE. This proposed change is the focal point of legislation like the Boosting Benefits and COLA for Seniors Act, introduced as Senate Bill 3529 in late 2025. The logic here is straightforward. The CPIE is designed to specifically track the spending habits of seniors. It gives appropriate weight to the categories that actually impact retirees, such as healthcare and housing. The advocacy data is clear on this. If the CPIE had been used over the past 2 decades instead of the CPI-W, many retirees today would be enjoying meaningfully higher monthly payments. Now, it is important to be realistic about where this stands. As of April 2026, this bill has been introduced, but it has not yet passed into law. It remains a proposal rather than a reality. However, the political reality is shifting. The fact that this proposal has gained bipartisan attention and that multiple similar bills, such as the Social Security Expansion Act, Senate Bill 770 are circulating in Congress tells us that the pressure is mounting. Lawmakers are finding it increasingly difficult to ignore the unified voice of seniors. Advocacy groups, including the AARP and various grassroots organizations representing retired teachers, military personnel, and labor unions, have been relentless. Their letters, phone calls, town hall presence, and organized campaigns have changed the political calculus for members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. The argument is no longer just about the math, it is about the fairness of the contract. This leads us to the third and perhaps most complex dimension of the conversation: the long-term solvency of the Social Security system. This is where the debate gets difficult, but it is a conversation that every American needs to understand. The Social Security trust funds have been facing immense financial pressure for years. In February 2026, the Congressional Budget Office released updated projections that suggested the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund is on track to be exhausted by 2032. That is a full year earlier than previous estimates. It is vital that we interpret these projections correctly. A projection of depletion does not mean that the Social Security program will cease to exist. Payroll taxes will continue to flow into the system every single day. The money collected from workers across the country is still there. However, under current law, once the trust fund reserves are exhausted, the system would no longer be able to pay full scheduled benefits from the reserves to cover the shortfall. At that point, benefits would automatically be reduced to match the incoming revenue. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that this reduction could be in the range of 21 to 28% across the board. If you are currently receiving a benefit of $2,000 per month, that could translate to a reduction of $400 to $560. For someone living on a fixed income, that is not a minor adjustment. It is the difference between paying for essential medicine and going without, or between keeping the lights on and falling behind on utility bills. This is exactly why the solvency debate is so intense. It is not just an academic exercise, it is a question of future stability. One of the most heavily debated solutions to this solvency crisis involves the cap on earnings subject to Social Security payroll taxes. In 2026, that taxable maximum is $184,500. This means that a person earning $500,000 a year pays the exact same dollar amount in Social Security payroll taxes as someone earning $180,500. Any income earned above that cap is completely exempt from Social Security taxes. Many advocates and several pieces of proposed legislation are calling for a change to this system. The Social Security Expansion Act, for example, proposes applying payroll taxes to earnings above $400,000, or even eliminating the cap entirely. Proponents argue that this would generate enormous additional revenue, shoring up the program for decades without requiring a single cut to existing benefits. Opponents argue that such a move would amount to a significant tax hike on high earners and could have broader economic consequences. While there is no current consensus on the best path forward, the mere fact that this conversation is happening with such urgency is a positive development. For years, the issue of solvency was a political third rail that no one wanted to touch. Today, it is on the table, being debated with intensity and focus. This suggests that we are moving toward a period of potential reform rather than continued stagnation. So, what does all of this mean for you on a practical, day-to-day basis? If you are already receiving Social Security benefits, or if you are preparing to claim, you need to take control of your situation. First, and most importantly, you must ensure that your information with the Social Security Administration is accurate and up to date. The simplest way to do this is to create or log into your My Social Security account at the official SSA Gov website. This portal is your window into your personal benefit status. It provides access to your earnings record, your benefit estimates, and all official communications from the agency. If you are not comfortable using the internet, or if you encounter issues with the website, do not just ignore it. You can call the Social Security Administration directly at 1-800-772-1213. They are available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Alternatively, you can visit a local field office in person. You should take the time to review your earnings record carefully. Make sure that every single year of your work history is correctly reflected. It is more common than people realize for errors to appear in these records. A single missing year or an incorrect income figure can have a negative impact on the calculation of your benefits. If you find a mistake, you have the right to request a correction, and you should do so immediately. If you are someone who was affected by the WEP or GPO elimination, and you believe your benefit was not properly adjusted, or if you have not received your retroactive payment, you need to contact the SSA office. Bipartisan groups of senators have been pressuring the agency to expedite these cases and honor the full retroactive period going back to January 2024. Do not let your claims sit in limbo. If you are approaching your retirement age and you have not yet claimed your benefits, you need to weigh your options with extreme care. The general principle of delaying benefits remains one of the most powerful tools in your financial toolkit. For every year you delay claiming beyond your full retirement age, up to age 70, your monthly benefit increases by approximately 8%. That is a guaranteed inflation-adjusted increase that is incredibly difficult to replicate in any traditional investment market. Whether or not delaying makes sense for you depends on a variety of personal factors, including your current health, your other financial needs, your other sources of income, and, importantly, your spouse's situation. You have to consider that if you are married, your decision about when to claim doesn't just affect you. It impacts the survivor benefits that your spouse might receive in the future. Because of the legislative developments we have discussed, specifically the potential for a more generous COLA formula in the future, the base value of your Social Security benefit could become more valuable over time. This is an additional variable to keep in mind when you are calculating your long-term retirement strategy. It is always wise to consult with a professional who understands not just the current rules, but also the potential legislative shifts on the horizon. Do not make these decisions in a vacuum. There is another aspect of this conversation that often gets overlooked, and that is the importance of civic engagement. We need to be very direct about how change happens in Washington. The Social Security Fairness Act did not become law because politicians suddenly decided to be generous. It happened because millions of retirees, public servants, and concerned citizens organized, applied relentless pressure, and made it politically impossible to ignore the issue any longer. The current momentum behind COLA reform and solvency measures exists for that exact same reason. Seniors are one of the most consistent and powerful voting blocs in the country. You cross party lines, you participate in elections at high rates, and when you are united on an issue, you represent an unstoppable political force. Every retiree who has written a letter to their representative, every person who has picked up the phone, attended a town hall meeting, or signed a petition has contributed to the progress we see today. You are the reason these issues are being discussed. Many of you are not just thinking about your own benefits, you are thinking about your children and your grandchildren. You are worried about the long-term future of the country and whether this program will remain a pillar of support for the next generation. It is natural to feel alarmed when you hear reports about trust fund depletion or potential benefit reductions. But it is important to remember that Social Security has faced serious solvency challenges in the past, most notably in the early 1980s. During that period, Congress acted, made the hard choices, and shored up the system for decades. The current legislative push is an attempt to do exactly that again. If the government can pass meaningful reform of the revenue structure, whether through adjusting the earnings cap or other policy measures, they can extend the program's life for generations to come. That broader promise of protecting Social Security, not just for the retirees of today, but for the workers of tomorrow, is what makes this moment in history so significant. It is a defining issue for our time. In summary, let's look at where we stand. Real, historic changes have taken place. The WEP and GPO provisions, which plagued millions, have been repealed. Billions of dollars in retroactive payments have been distributed to those who were owed. A 2.8% COLA for 2026 is currently in effect, and there is active, serious legislation moving through the halls of Congress that aims to fix the COLA formula and address the long-term solvency of the system with more support than we have seen in years. We have not crossed the finish line yet. There are still battles to be fought. There are still obstacles in the way of comprehensive reform. But the direction of the conversation has shifted. The momentum is on your side. The seniors who stay engaged, who stay informed, and who continue to make their voices heard are the driving force behind this progress. You worked your entire life for these benefits. You earned them through your labor, your sacrifice, and your decades of faithful tax contributions. This is your money. This is your contract. The fight to protect these benefits, to ensure they remain inflation-adjusted, and to secure them for the future is perhaps the most important fight of our generation. So, stay informed. Rely only on official sources for your information. Verify everything you hear, and make sure that the people you love and care about are aware of what is happening with the program that millions of Americans depend on for their daily survival. When you speak up, you are heard. When you engage, you make a difference. The work you do today by staying involved and advocating for your rights ensures that the promise of Social Security remains a reality for you and for the people who will follow in your footsteps. Let's keep pushing, let's keep watching, and let's keep our eyes on the progress being made at this critical junction. Keep an eye on these developments, protect your accounts, and remember that you have a powerful voice in this ongoing national conversation. Stay tuned to this channel for more updates as they happen.